People in Ukraine are waking up to another day of war and fear. Loud explosions have been heard in the capital Kyiv over the last few hours. There was no breakthrough at talks between Ukrainian and Russian officials yesterday. More meetings are set for today. One of the issues on the agenda is expected to be the devastating situation in the city of Mariupol.
In a matter of seconds, they have to run for their lives. Then the bombardment begins. This is what life looks like in Mariupol, a city under siege by Russian forces. We have no information at all. We know nothing. It looks like we are living in a deep forest. They should have told us something at least about what's going on and where. Heavy shelling has destroyed homes, supermarkets and hospitals in Mariupol. Residents have been without food, water and electricity. More than 2,000 people have died here since the war began. Footage from above shows the scale of destruction across the city, which is completely surrounded by Russian forces. On Monday, a first convoy of civilians was able to escape Mariupol, the first evacuation in 2 weeks of Russian bombardment. But an aid convoy trying to reach the city was reportedly blocked by Russian forces. This footage was released by the Russian Defense Ministry. They say 200 buses have been prepared for the evacuation of Mariupol residents, and aid is on its way.
Car convoys with humanitarian cargo were promptly formed and immediately sent. The first convoy has already arrived in Mariupol and delivered 450 tons of medical supplies, essentials, and food, including baby food.
Information that DW is unable to verify. Meanwhile, fighting on the ground shows no sign of abating.
Our reporter Matthias Böllinger is in Kyiv and joins us now for more. Matthias, let's start with Mariupol. People there now risking their lives to escape. They weren't able to use a humanitarian corridor. So what does that say about the level of people's desperation there now?
Well, what we've seen, these people, these 160 cars that have escaped, they used the humanitarian corridor, and it was possible to escape because the ceasefire held for some time, but then shelling began again. I think it would be very difficult to get out of the city without any corridor, without any agreement right now, because the city is completely surrounded and fighting has been going on around the city now. The situation in there is dire. It's been more than 10 days that people have had no food, no water, no medicine, no electricity. We also have scarce information from there because mostly the phones are down or the mobile network. So it's a very dire situation, and we're hearing that thousands have died already.
And in Kyiv, Matthias, where you are, we understand there have been more explosions near the centre. Can you tell us more about what's happening there?
Yeah, there were several explosions at night, some of them quite loud. We heard them here. And it seems that, again, residential buildings have been hit. A 10-story building was on fire and another 9-story building has been hit also on in the northern part of the city. And it seems that Russia is intensifying its shelling of the city and its bombings of the city. Kyiv had been spared, we have to say, for some time of heavy bombings after initially some bombs, if you remember the TV tower bomb, hit the city, but then it was a bit calmer, and now this has resumed, and we have visited one of these buildings, these residential buildings that have been hit by a shell yesterday.
Yaroslavna Filonenko has been sitting outside her apartment since the early morning hours. She's waiting for someone to pick her up after the apartment she has been living for decades was shelled overnight.
This is it. One room, another small one, and a kitchen. That's what it was.
It was 5 a.m. when a shell hit the house.
There was a loud bang, and then immediately some kind of white smoke that burnt in the eyes and the throat. And then I heard the firefighters in the corridor saying, "Don't go out, the staircase is gone." So they had me climb down on a firefighter's ladder.
We are at the northern edge of Kyiv, and this apartment building was fired upon from outside of the city, from the Russian positions north of Kyiv. Cleaning up some of the debris, but it's hard to imagine people will ever be able to live here again. Authorities are saying that at least one person died in the attack. Many more have lost everything they had. Those who can still access their property are trying to secure their belongings. Yaroslavna is 83 years old. This is the second war she has experienced. Her early childhood memories are of World War II.
I feel very bad. I'm tired. My head hurts badly. Why do I have to live through this? I just want some rest.
A relative is on his way to pick her up. Then she will have to start all over again.
Just a heartbreaking story, Matthias, and surely not the only one. Now, talks between Ukraine and Russia are resuming today. Do Ukrainians, like Yaroslavna in your piece, have anything to hope for, do you think?
Well, she has told me that she doesn't understand why it's impossible to find a solution to this, and that's probably what most people here see, because of course none of them have access to these talks. We have heard the Ukrainian side saying that they are carefully more optimistic about a possible solution or a ceasefire being negotiated, as they feel that the Russians are looking for a way out, that they have miscalculated. But of course this messaging is also part of the tactics, so we don't really know. What we know is that their official positions are very far apart from each other. Ukraine wanting to keep its sovereignty and wanting Russian troops out of the country, whereas Russia wants Ukraine to demilitarize, as they call it, to factually give up its sovereignty and its ability to defend itself.
Matthias, thank you for that. Matthias Buddinger, DW correspondent in Kyiv. Let's turn to DW Russia analyst Konstantin Egert. Now, Konstantin, we heard a little bit there from Matthias, but from what you're hearing, how are the talks going from the Russian perspective?
Well, I think that the Russian perspective is very much dependent on one man, Vladimir Putin, and we do not have an indication that he has any plans to change his plans on onslaughts on Ukraine. However, I think the fact that at least some humanitarian corridors were left unharassed during the previous day shows that there is basically a desire to, well, show some flexibility. The extent to which that was ordered by Putin or was the initiative of the local commanders remains to be seen. My suspicion will be that there is a certain exhaustion among the Russian troops and among actually the commanders who see that they are going nowhere with this campaign. And so I suppose that what we see is a general, how should I put it, decentralization of command in Ukraine. That usually means that local commanders will take the initiative and do things that that maybe in other circumstances they wouldn't do. Definitely, quite a bit of steam is out of this invasion.
Konstantin, last night a journalist with the country's state-run broadcaster stormed the main news programme, and she was holding a sign that read, "No war, stop the war, don't believe the propaganda, they're lying to you here." She was quickly arrested and she hasn't been reachable since. But before she was arrested, she posted a video on social media. Let's take a listen to what she said.
In the last years, unfortunately, I've been working with Kremlin propaganda on Channel 1, and I feel very much ashamed of that. I am very ashamed that I allowed such lies on TV. I allowed the brainwashing of the Russian people. We did not say anything in 2014 when it all started. We did not take to the streets and protest when the Kremlin poisoned Navalny. We silently watched this inhumane regime, and now the entire world has turned away from us. 10 more future generations won't wash out the shame of this fratricidal war.
A truly courageous act, given the harsh punishments, Konstantin. We've been hearing from day one of this invasion that Russians just aren't getting the full picture of this war. Is that changing now?
Well, I think as far as the state media is concerned, no, nothing changed at all. And this action is very brave. Actually, I have to say that in the 90 seconds video, Ms. Savsyannikova, that's her name, she pressed all the right buttons. I think it was such a politically succinct message that actually lots of Russian politicians can't formulate it better. I suppose that, though, this shows that there is definitely something bubbling under. And I think that lots of people are having second thoughts now. I don't know when it's going to burst into the open, but as is usually in Russian history, there is always some event which seems to be completely irrelevant that provokes an avalanche, a political collapse. And this is what may happen in such circumstances. And I suppose that lots of people now are having second thoughts, including, by the way, at the top, just around the time that this courageous producer at State TV staged her action, another former high-level functionary, Deputy Prime Minister Dvorkovich, who is currently head of the International Chess Federation, made an interesting statement to an American website, Mother Jones, in which he said he pities the Ukrainian people, he pities the Russian people, war is horrible. Basically, it was a very mild message. He's a former state bureaucrat, but still he is in Russia. He's a former high-state functionary, and even he seems to start disagreeing. I suppose my suspicion, Rebecca, we'll be hearing more such voices, probably initially quite cautious, in the coming days. My experience of 1989, 1991 shows that this does not happen like a snap thing. It goes on for some time before it becomes something more acceptable. Let's probably hope for that.
All right, Konstantin, thank you very much for that. Konstantin Eggert. The White House says high-ranking US and Chinese officials have held 7 hours of intense talks on the fighting in Ukraine. In the meeting in Rome, the US raised concerns about China's possible support to Russia following its invasion. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the Chinese side was warned there will be consequences if it provides assistance to Moscow.
What we have conveyed and what was conveyed by our national security advisor in this meeting is that should they provide military or other assistance that, of course, violates sanctions or supports the war effort, that there will be significant consequences. But in terms of what those specifics look like, we would coordinate with our partners and allies to make that determination.
Here's a look at some other developments in the Ukraine conflict. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned of the potential for nuclear war over Ukraine. Guterres stated that the prospect of nuclear conflict, once unthinkable, is now within the realm of possibility. He urged Russia to stop its invasion of Ukraine and pursue diplomacy instead. Ukraine has denied launching a strike on the separatist-held city of Donetsk after Russia accused it of killing 23 civilians. Russian officials said Ukraine has committed a war crime. A Ukrainian military spokesperson said the rocket was clearly of Russian origin. Germany has announced it's beefing up its air force with dozens of US-made F-35 stealth fighters. They'll be replacing Germany's fleet of Tornado fighter bombers, which are currently the only planes in the German Air Force certified to carry NATO nuclear weapons. Germany's Air Force commander said Russia's actions in Ukraine left no alternative.
Germany's Bundeswehr have been flying these Tornado jets for 40 years. They are still operational, albeit aging, but are due to be retired in 2030. Tornadoes allow Germany to fulfill its commitment to NATO by delivering American nuclear weapons in case of need. But new aircraft are now needed. After carefully considering all options on the table, I have decided to start procuring F-35 jets to fulfill our nuclear sharing obligations. The F-35 is considered the most modern fighter jet in the world. It can carry US nuclear weapons, and its design and coating make it difficult for radar to detect.
I think we're sending the right signal, that we've chosen a system that's available on the market to accelerate the modernization of our armed forces.
Choosing the F-35 should speed up this process. Another option is to upgrade the Europe-made Eurofighter jets so they too could carry US nuclear weapons. But that would probably take too long. The Bundeswehr will continue to use and buy European fighter jets. But the biggest purchase will now be of aircraft from the US. Military expert Stefan Bayer says this marks a pivotal change.
The recent discussions about defense and security policy make clear that the German way of always wanting to develop something itself may take far too much time, so buying something off the shelf may be the quicker solution.
With its decision to purchase the F-35s, Germany is embarking on a new path. For now, the Bundeswehr is no longer pursuing ambitious development projects and instead buying what's on the market, even if this means greater dependence on the US.